Well, hello and welcome to episode 36 of the Movie Burner podcast, the weekly podcast from Movie Burner Entertainment, where we discuss the latest entertainment news, reviews and share our views. So what's up first, John?
The first trailer has dropped for Dumbo, Stephen. It was a very emotional trailer, and it's got a lot of people talking about this film. Is it a return to form for Tim Burton, or is he going to destroy a classic film from all the way back in the 1940s? Who knows? You're going to tell us all about it.
Yeah, I picked this up on Variety a few days ago, John. Dumbo trailer, Tim Burton's live-action reboot takes flight. Is it a return to form? That's the question. It's very hard to say in a teaser trailer, but from what I've seen, I quite like this trailer, John. It reveals some of the cast involved. I've clearly worked with Mr. Burton before, the likes of Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito, Colin Farrell in there as well. Looks like he's going to be a prominent character. Looks like he's playing the father. I liked it. One of the things that stood out to me in this trailer was the CG in this trailer looks phenomenal, John. Very realistic. Whether or not this is just the best parts of the movie remains to be seen, but for a teaser trailer it really did hit the spot. Just going back to the article on Variety, Dumbo actually flies in Disney's first teaser trailer for its live action Dumbo released on Wednesday. The flight takes place at the very end of the 80 seconds of footage after the teaser promises a beloved tale will take you to new heights. Dumbo, directed by Tim Burton and loosely inspired by the 1941 animated film, stars Danny DeVito as the owner of a struggling circus. He enlists former star Holt Farrier, played by Colin Farrell, and his children Millie, Nico Parker and Joe, played by Finlay Hobbins, to care for a newborn elephant whose oversized ears make him a laughingstock. We're all family here, no matter how small, Parker tells the sad-eyed elephant. At the end of the trailer, Parker's character turns out to be the key to the pachyderm's flight, tells him, "Here, Dumbo, show them." The story appears to be taking place sometime during the 19th century. The trailer also introduces Michael Keaton as the entrepreneur V.A. Vanderveer, Alan Arkin as Wall Street tycoon J. Griffin Remington, and Eva Green as aerial artist Colette Marchant, who's seen swinging from a huge chandelier. The producers are Justin Springer, Erin Kruger, Katerli Fraunfelder and Derek Frey. Burton directs from a screenplay by Kruger. Dumbo flies into theatres on March 29th, 2019.
Yeah, the first thing I take from that little article you've read out there, Stephen, is the word pachyderm. I never knew that existed until you read it out there. That old saying is true right enough that you do learn something new every day. Apparently that means a thick-skinned mammal. Well, there you go. I don't know why they couldn't have just said elephant. In terms of this film, I'm babbling on already. It's ominous. I mean, we've probably about another hour to go. But this film, I've not seen the original in a good 20 odd years, so I'm coming into this fresh. I can't compare it to the original 1941 film. Tell you what, I was but a twinkle in my grandmother's eyes when that was out. But yeah, I can't come from a position of authority and really discuss the original film because I've not seen it since I was a young boy. Yeah, but I mean, we discussed this when the trailer came out, Stephen, and you asked me, is this necessary, I believe, or something along those lines? And I replied with, I'm not entirely sure. Because obviously Disney seem to be lacking a bit of originality over the last decade or so. They're not really releasing a lot of original films. They seem to be following this Hollywood phase of remaking classic films. We've seen it already with Beauty and the Beast. Umpteen other films, I believe Cinderella was one as well, Snow White. And also we're getting The Lion King coming out next year as well. So they're lacking originality, but I tell you what, one thing you can't slag them for is doing a good job of these reboots. I thoroughly enjoyed the Beauty and the Beast last year. I also loved the Jungle Book remake from last year as well, so you can't really slag them in that regard. They are lacking a bit of originality, but they're generally speaking hitting the ball out the park with their remakes, and this looks like another return to form in that regard because, as you say, the visuals are incredible. The CG Dumbo looks amazing, it looks so realistic. I think there's a moment early on in the trailer you see his eyes tearing up slightly when the young girl says to him, all people are welcome in this family regardless of how small they are or something along those lines. That's good for Danny DeVito as well because he's obviously a height afflicted chap. Can't remember how tall he is, 5'1" or something. Love Danny though. I'm not slagging Danny boy off. But yeah, it's ticking all the boxes for me, Stephen. The story is intriguing. As I said, I've not seen the original in a long time, at least 2 decades. I'll show my age here. And that's good for me because obviously I can come into this new remake with a fresh take on it. The score as well was absolutely incredible. I believe it's Danny Elfman that's scoring the film. And he's obviously a wildly successful cinematographer. I think he worked on The Simpsons back in the day. So that's very promising. I think we were discussing the cinematographer as well before we came on. This is a chap that's just been involved in a litany of incredible films, a lot of Marvel films over the last few years, and just I think he's worked with Martin McDonaghy as well, so this is a well-respected guy, and the visuals look incredible. It's got that Tim Burton feel to it, but obviously it's not got the weirdness that usually comes with his films as well, so I'm looking forward to this. The trailer was on point for me, an amazing cast, the feels are all there, and we know Disney can handle a remake like no other.
I mean, Tim Burton, one of the questions was, is this him back on form, John? You know, I did say it was very early days. I do hope that this live action film is not going to be a scene for scene of the animated film. I think, you know, as good as Beauty and the Beast was last year, you know, barring a couple of additional scenes that weren't in the animated film from '91, it basically was a scene for scene remake. All the visuals and you know, the settings and the songs were all exactly replicant in the live action one that came out last year. I hope they don't go down this road with Dumbo. I'd like to see some kind of fresh take on this very simple storyline. The other thing is as well, I think people might be concerned with Tim Burton because he has worked off books before, the Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Alice in Wonderland as well, and they've not had the sort of impact of Burton's earlier career. I don't think it's very fair to judge him on a couple of duff films. Overall, he's done some terrific work, you know, over the last 30 years or so. I didn't think he would be interested in doing, you know, a film like this, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes about his business on this and the direction that he's going to take.
Yeah, I never thought Tim Burton would be interested in doing a remake of a Disney classic animated film, Stephen, but here, clearly I'm wrong, and he's obviously wanting to broaden his horizons. This is a guy who's kind of been shoehorned into a very specific genre of films over the years, and this would just be another addition to his wildly successful career as a director, if he can pull it off, and I've got no doubt in my mind that he will pull it off, judging on the trailer. It's looking promising anyway. The cast is absolutely superb. You've got Michael Keaton in there, Eva Green, Colin Farrell, and obviously with the cast that's been assembled, you've got the reuniting of Tim Burton, Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito for the first time since Batman Forever, so that's a big moment. Alan Arkin's in there. This is another guy that's an absolute legend in the film business. He's obviously worked with Tim Burton as well in the classic film Edward Scissorhands. But just going back to that question that we kind of posed about, is this a return to form for Tim Burton? I don't know that he was ever off form, Stephen. I know he's had a couple of meh films over the last few years, most notably Alice Through the Looking Glass. But as she says, over his career as a whole, he's been a wildly successful director. But my big question is not, is this going to be a return to form for him? My big question would be, are we going to see Johnny Depp coming in as a small cameo in this film? Because we know he's got a really close relationship with Tim Burton. I wouldn't be surprised to see him do a Daniel Craig-esque Star Wars type cameo where he's maybe coming in as a masked sort of a side periphery character. But yeah, I can't really add much more, Stephen. It was a short little teaser trailer, but the signs are all pointing to it being very promising for this film going forward. They've assembled a nice cast of people that have obviously had experience working with Tim Burton before. I'm repeating myself here, like a Alzheimer's suffering person, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this.
And this film comes out on March 2019, John, a long way away. I'm sure we'll have a few teaser trailers before now and then, and obviously a full trailer as well that we can talk about. But just moving on to our next article that came in from Digital Spy. This is Venom. Director hints at future Spider-Man crossover. Now, we've talked about this before, I think, when we were talking about the trailer when it came out. It's not really exactly exclusive news, this. You know, there was always talk that there was going to be some kind of a crossover at some point with Spider-Man. Something that you did say, John, that I didn't pick up from the article was that it doesn't actually mention Tom Holland as Spider-Man, so we'll see how that fits in. But basically, Digital Spy have dropped this piece of news, and this is what they had to say. We've settled the all-important symbiote debate, and we've discussed whether or not it's okay to fancy Venom. So now it's time to ponder over where Spider-Man fits into the whole thing. Because although the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Sony's Venom project are two very different things, there's still a lot of fans holding out for a Spidey-sized cameo when Venom arrives later this year. Fortunately, it seems that there is hope that Venom and Spider-Man will meet, as Venom's director Ruben Fleischer is reluctant to rule any future crossover out entirely. He had this to say: "It feels very much like Venom's movie." He concluded, "It's the introduction of the character," hinting at some sort of meeting for the two characters. Rubin told Empire as to where it will go in future movies and who he'll run across, "I can't say." One place where Spider-Man might show up in the Venomverse is the film's sequel, which we know is definitely happening thanks to Woody Harrelson. I'm in a little fraction of the movie, but I'll be in the next one, you know. The actor let slip, so I haven't read the script, but anyways, just roll the dice. When asked if he's allowed to say who he'll be playing in Venom, Harrelson said, "I thought it was under wraps that I'm even in the movie." You know, taken from this article, John, and I don't think it would be very fair on the character of Venom or Tom Hardy to really have a cameo in there from Tom Holland or whoever might be playing Spider-Man. As we said, they don't actually mention Tom Holland in the article. I think this should be focused, 100% on Venom. I don't think we should have any cameos at this stage. For people that aren't comic book fans, are not really familiar with this character at all, we've got a little bit of him in Spider-Man 3, the Sam Raimi film, which was it bombed, but I think this film has to focus 100% on this character, and I don't think any cameo would help. I think it'd be a distraction if anything. People would be looking out for it throughout the movie, and I don't think it'd be very fair on the character or the actor playing the character.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Stephen. This is an Eddie Brock Venom origin story, and as a result it really has to focus on Eddie Brock and how he forms this relationship with the symbiotic alien parasite creature Venom. You can't really be diving off and saying, "Oh, here's Spider-Man or Peter Parker," just dawdling about in the background and taking photographs of whatever the hell Peter Parker does in his spare time. That would seriously distract from the story that they're trying to tell of Eddie Brock and how he became the anti-hero or villain that is Venom. But one interesting thing that came from that article there, Stephen, was Woody Harrelson. I didn't actually realise Woody was in this. I think we may have discussed this before, and I'm probably talking crap, not for the first time. And I think I probably mentioned that Woody was in the film, but I didn't realise he was in it. I haven't delved into that very quickly there. The rumours are that he's playing the character Carnage, which is a strange offshoot of Venom himself. And that would maybe help answer a question that had been forming in my mind for a number of months or weeks now in regards to this Venom film, and how that Sony's going to make these villain films themselves work. When you're focusing on villains and you've not got Spider-Man, you're going to have an antagonist for the antagonist. And if Carnage is indeed being played by Woody Harrelson, that may explain the direction that Sony's going to go with these films. Obviously missing Peter Parker and Spider-Man, you're going to have antagonists for the antagonist. Maybe Carnage is going to be the antagonist for Venom in this film, and Woody's going to be playing him, but then that would be contradictory because he's then saying he's going to be appearing in the sequel. So if he's a villain and Venom doesn't kill him in the first film or take him out in some way, then that'd be a bit crap. You've got him becoming Venom, taking on this antagonist, failing, and then he pops up in a sequel. So who knows, it's all up in the air at the moment. Just come back to this potential crossover, Stephen. That was the one thing I did pick up as well, the fact that they didn't mention Tom Holland's name. It just says there could be a potential Spider-Man crossover at some point in the future. There was obviously heavy speculation that Tom Holland was actually having a cameo in this film. I believe it was John Snepp says that he'd been seen on set filming some scenes, so I don't know whether that's true or not. Obviously the director's come out and says we're not going to get to see Peter Parker or Spider-Man, so it's just a question of who you believe. Is he double bluffing? Is Snepp right or is the director right? I don't know. But yeah, I don't think we will see Tom Holland's iteration of the character crossing over to the Sony villainverse. I just don't think it will happen. It would muddy the waters too much. The MCU is a separate, contained entity, and Sony, what they're building is a completely different universe. I think we might see another version of Spider-Man maybe popping up and mingling with the villains verse that Sony's creating some point in the future.
I think you're absolutely right, John. I think Sony have got this array of characters that they can use. I don't think the first film in their this universe they're creating, they're going to run back to the reliable Peter Parker, who's having some success in the MCU. You've only got to look at the characters that they've got at their disposal. As you mentioned, Venom. You've got Silver and Black in there. You've got Morbius. Craven is another one. Mysterio. So it's really just about building this universe up really from scratch, and I think they've chosen wisely here to introduce the Venom character. I think there's enough pull from the comic book fan base to go out and see this film. Tom Hardy being cast in the role as well, I think's a wise move as well. A lot of Tom Hardy fans will turn out in their numbers to see this film as well. You've got Riz Ahmed in there and Michelle Williams. So it's a very good cast. I think they can build on this. I think they'd be peaking too soon if they were to introduce Spider-Man in this film. You know, as much as I'd love to see that happen, I don't think it's a wise move to do it too soon. And as you said, whether it will be Tom Holland's version of the character, I very much doubt that as well. I think they might go for a reboot or a recasting and keep it contained. As you said, it could muddy the waters, but it remains to be seen.
Yeah, one final thing I would say, Stephen, but obviously out with those, Stephen, you've also got Green Goblin and Dr. Octopus who can maybe pop up at some point as well. So you've got an array of villains that they could certainly use, and I think they will go down that route. You'll have an antagonist for an antagonist type setup, maybe minor villains that will pop up and fight the bigger villains that they're fleshing out. Then we will see a version of Spider-Man popping up at some point in the future. The one little question I'm going to ask you before we swiftly move on, Stephen, though, is do you think Sony will follow in the suit of Logan and Deadpool 2 with an R-rated universe of films instead of following the more kid-friendly approach that Marvel have been going for? In doing so, you could maybe see a grittier take of Spider-Man as opposed to Tom Holland's family-friendly MCU version. Also, with the trailers we've seen for Venom in the past few months, there is a hint at it being a little bit darker. You see a bit of violence in there, and I think it's ripe, especially for this character Venom, to have an R-rated approach. He's a very grotesque and violent character anyway, so I would love to see them doing that. We get two very separate Spider-Man takes of a character. You get Tom Holland's kid-friendly MCU version, and then you maybe have Sony's darker, R-rated, grittier version.
I think and I hope it will be R-rated, John, and I think if it is R-rated, it will put to bed that Tom Holland will be coming back to appear as Spider-Man in this version of this universe, because I don't think the theme and tone will suit what the MCU have done with Peter Parker and Spider-Man and what Sony are doing. Early indications, it does look like it's going to be R-rated. I'm just looking at the picture of Venom at the moment. That's certainly not kid-friendly. That's terrifying. It just looks absolutely menacing, and I certainly wouldn't like to get into an argument with this chap. But no, I hope it is. I hope they do go down the road of it being R-rated. I think the recent success of Logan and Deadpool, I think that shows the indications that you can do comic book films with a more adult theme. It certainly has worked for those two. It's not entirely impossible for it to happen in this movie as well. I'm certainly looking forward to this movie, John. I think Tom Hardy is a great casting choice as well. Yeah. I love the trailer, and even from the trailer, it certainly has an R-rated feel to it.
Yeah, that picture looks like my Labrador, Stephen, after he's been munching on a few treats and he's wanting to gnaw away at my arm. It's not a pretty sight. But we're moving on swiftly to the next topic, which is all about Pinewood Shepperton Studios expansion and the plans to move it forward a garden apace. You're going to talk about it via the article from Variety, Stephen, and then I'll share my views on it.
Yeah, just before that, John, before I move on to the article, for anyone that's not familiar with these studios, these are quite legendary studios. Pinewood is more the prominent name that you might hear outside of the UK, but Shepperton certainly has had its share of success in films like Alien, Doctor Strangelove, etc. It had a bit of a financial meltdown in the 1970s, by all accounts, and the studio has been passed about from different companies, etc., and it's suffered. And it looks like Pinewood Studios Group are now consulting with the local community and industry to pave way for a planning application to expand on what's already there. It's such an iconic studio. We know it more because we're based in the UK. If you ever see any movies that crop up like The Boys from Brazil, or David Lynch's the Elephant Man, if you keep your eye out on the credits, you always see filmed at Shepperton Studios or whatever. It's good news, John, but just moving on to the article now. This was from Variety, it dropped, and this is what they had to say. The move to expand the UK's iconic Shepperton Studios is taking shape, with its owner, Pinewood Studios Group, now consulting with the local community and industry, paving the way for a planning application. With studio space in the UK in high demand, Pinewood wants to grow the Shepperton site, creating more space for big-ticket movies and high-end TV. Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again and Mary Poppins Returns are two recent movies that use Shepperton, which has a long history and was also used in Doctor Strangelove and Alien, like I just said, and amongst other films. Work is already underway at Pinewood Studios itself as part of a $276 million expansion plan. A full planning application for Shepperton is likely within weeks. Whether it is approved will be decided by authorities, but if there is no major objections and a green light is forthcoming, that could be granted by the year end. Pinewood has acquired a large chunk of land adjacent to the existing Shepperton, as first reported by Variety in February. It wants to build new sound stages, offices, workshops and backlots to the Shepperton site. It currently spans 14 sound stages and a backlot on 600,000 square feet, 25-acre site. Pinewood was acquired by private equity group Earmont in 2016, acquired an adjacent lot 4 times that size.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen, I can only echo much of what you says. It's just a iconic studio over here. You just look through the list of films that have been involved with this over the years that have been shot there. Aliens, Alien, Star Wars, the Bourne franchise, 28 Days Later, The Fifth Element. The list is just absolutely endless, even Full Metal Jacket. So yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to see that this is getting expanded even further. It's also an iconic studio, as I said, and anything that makes it possible to bring big budget films and film them here can only be a boost for the United Kingdom and the film industry over here. So it's great news to me, Stephen. The one little sad bit of news that I took from the article was that they're kind of shutting down other parts of the business linked to Pinewood. I think Pinewood TV or something that's linked in with producing UK films, help produce films like Their Finest and stuff like that. So it's sad to see that people are losing their jobs through this shake-up. You never like to hear of that, but I'm not one of them, and I'm selfish. So anything that links to expanding this studio out even further and making these big budget films come over here, I'm all for that.
I think as well, John, that Disney have probably had a major contribution to this expansive work as well, with the recent success of the Marvel films, Thor films, Captain America, etc. that have been used. Guardians of the Galaxy is another one. And also more recently Beauty and the Beast, and as we said, Mary Poppins Returns. So I think, with these major movies using the Shepperton brand and using their facilities is aided in the decision to expand. Clearly Pinewood see the potential on their own property, and it's going to be a big boost to the UK film industry as well. That's more important here. Because I think these facilities have got so much to give. I'm just getting back to 1977 and the very first Star Wars, which kicked it all off for the Hollywood blockbuster. It was a game changer, and Shepperton and Pinewood had a lot to do with that, with the facilities they gave, especially for those Death Star scenes that we saw in the third part of the movie as well. It's just such an iconic place, and I'm glad to see this is, hopefully, fingers crossed, happening.
Yeah, that's one thing I'd say about this studio, Stephen. As I say, it's an iconic institution over here in the United Kingdom. We don't have a huge amount of film studios. I don't think we have anyway. This is only one of the few that I know of, and that's because it is absolutely synonymous with massive blockbusters, but Star Wars in particular. This has been an 11-year battle of the wills against South Buckinghamshire's council and the residents round about to really get it expanded. As I say, this doesn't really impact on me. I stay in Scotland, so I'm selfish. I'm not getting ejected out of my house or whatever to make this possible. But as a film fan who knows all about Pinewood's impact on cinema, not just in the United Kingdom but all over the world, I'm just happy to see that they're expanding it out, and hopefully it will now rival some of the big Hollywood studios, and we'll see even more films coming over here, bolstering the UK film industry. And yeah, I'm happy about this, man. I can't really add much more. I'll be keeping a close eye on it and seeing what happens with this project going forward, because one of the earlier plans, I don't know if this is following it, was to really bring in street plans that would mirror locations around the world, like Amsterdam, New York and stuff. So I can't wait to see what they do with it.
Yeah, and just moving on now, John, to our next section of the show. It is the Movie Burner blog rundown. This is part of the show where we discuss the last 7 days of movie reviews on the Movie Burner website, movieburnerintertainment.org. And just kicking things off, this was dropped by Chauncey Talise, one of our writers, and it was a movie just out this year called Upgrade. Now I know that it's going to be very hard for you and I to talk about this now, John, because The film over here in the UK isn't released for another 6, 7 or 8 weeks. It's not till August, which is disappointing. This film is directed by Leigh Whannell and stars Logan Marshall Green, Richard Anastasius and Roscoe Campbell. I enjoyed Chauncey's review on this. I don't think it gave us too much of any major spoilers in it. What I did like was this being a low budget film, it certainly exceeds expectations.
Yeah, I heard about this film, Stephen. I believe it was Jeremy Jans I watched on YouTube and he was talking about it and that caught my attention. I believe it's a Blumhouse film and obviously they are famed for doing pretty shit films and followed up by pretty good films. And this seems to be one of the pretty good films. I think the premise is about a guy that kind of ends up paraplegic or paralysed, loses control of his body obviously, and then he gets fitted with this futuristic technology that allows him to speak and also walk again. But then he's kind of voluntarily handing over his consciousness and control of his body to it at times as well. So it was interesting. I think it's a kind of a revenge-fueled film. So it's one I'm definitely going to watch when it comes out over here finally in the late August of this year. And yeah, this review is just further gave me that emphasis to go and give it a watch.
I can see why it's got that RoboCop description, John. It certainly has a lot of hints in there. It's certainly got that Paul Verhoeven style about it. Just moving on to our next review. This was one that Darren posted. It's called Stephanie. It was out in 2017. This was directed by Akiva Goldsman. It was written by Ben Collins and Luke Petoskey, who did the screenplay, and stars Shree Crooks, Frank Grillo and Anna Torv. Yeah,
the one thing I find interesting about this, Stephen, is that Darren says that it shakes up a genre type film. It's not so much a horror, and then it delves into sci-fi elements as well, and just the fact that it's one of those kind of a films that puts a downer on it. If you like your films to be nice and fluffy, then this is not the film for you, because it's quite dark. And also just the plot as well, about it being about a dark malevolent power that's stalking a young girl in her home. It just intrigues me. It's up my street, and I probably would give it a bash if it was on the TV or something.
One of the things I did pick up from Darren's review was for an 86-minute film, it does focus a lot on the character of Stephanie. I can understand what Darren's saying here. I think especially a film that's running under an hour and a half and focusing on the sort of character of Stephanie, the daughter, probably spending too much time with her sort of loneliness. It can sort of hamper the film and its pacing. Darren's final thoughts are he liked it, and he did think for people who are looking for a different take on the genre film, this is well worth watching, and it's really under the radar right now, but I will say the ending is a bit of a letdown. And he rates it 6 out of 10. But just moving on to our next movie review and the Movie Burner blog rundown, it is The Island. This is a blast from the past, John. We're going back 13 years here. This is written by writer D.M. Anderson, and this was directed by Michael Bay and stars Scarlett Johansson, Ewan McGregor and Jimon Hunsu.
Yes, I haven't seen this film, Stephen. Obviously, as you said, it's from 13 years ago. When I seen The Island getting posted up, I kind of thought it was a Rob Carlyle, Leonardo DiCaprio film from back in the day, but then I remembered that was The Beach and I had to slap myself over the head. But yeah, it's directed by Michael Bay, and the one thing I take from this review is Dave's comment about it being a fucking masterpiece for Michael Bay, and just going along the lines of saying if you've got a kid that is regularly getting D's and F's but suddenly manages a C+ in history during his senior year, that you would be as proud as punch. So yeah, not seen the film, but just based on this review, I would go and give it a watch, and just for the mere fact that Scarlett Johansson's in there along with Ewan McGregor and, as you said, Jimon Hunsu. I don't know if that's how you say his name. It's one of those guys, you see the face, you recognise him immediately, but the name is just horrendously bad to say. But yeah, I'd give this a watch.
I think you should, John. I remember seeing this on DVD. This is going back a good decade or so. It's a terrific film. Michael Bay. Previous to this film, I know that he did Pearl Harbor, which was a decent film. I know that he's done a lot of music videos before he did the sort of big Hollywood films. He did Bad Boys, he did The Rock, terrific film. Yeah. Bad Boys 2, the sequel, as we know. He's did a couple of Transformers films as well. Yeah, I mean, it's a great film, John. I would recommend going and seeing it.
But we'll move on swiftly, Stephen, to one that you reviewed, and it's The Green Lantern First Flight from 2009, directed by Lauren Montgomery and starring Christopher Meloni, Victor Garber and Trisha Helfer. I hope this is better than the Ryan Reynolds abomination from 2011. Can't be worse.
Yeah, this I didn't see this in its initial release, John. As you know, I'm going through a bit of a DC animated universe binge at the moment. I think if I did see this on its initial release and then saw the Ryan Reynolds version, I'd be very disappointed. As if I wasn't disappointed enough with the Ryan Reynolds one. I certainly would be, because this film is it's a terrific movie in its own right. Lauren Montgomery from the kickoff. For people that are not familiar with the character, maybe only not by name, I think this is a good starting point for you. Hal Jordan's origin story was heavily emphasised in the Justice League, The New Frontier from the year before, and I can see why she wanted to really skim over his origins in this movie. It's more or less 5 minutes into the film, and basically that's it. That's your lot, and I quite like that style. If you've watched The New Frontier, you'll understand why, because you don't want to regurgitate the story again, and I like the way she just moves on from it. We quickly establish that he's part of the Green Lantern Corps and how he meets Sinestro, and it's just a great movie. The pacing of it is fine, the casting's brilliant. You know, and you've got Michael Madsen in there as well, and Kurtwood Smith, who we all know as Clarence J. Boddicker from RoboCop. It's a terrific cast. I probably repeat myself too much when I'm talking about these films and the cast, but it's just amazing to see such talent involved in these animated films. And if you've not seen any of the movies, this is actually a good starting point if you're not too familiar with the Green Lantern character and his origin story.
I'm not, Stephen, and the only brush I had with the character prior to this was that 2011 film starring Ryan Reynolds, and it put me right off him. But we're moving on to the very next film, which is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, directed by G.A. Bayona and starring Chris Pratt, Bryce Dallas Howard and Rafe Spall. It's obviously the second iteration of the current Jurassic World trilogy. I've not went to see it yet. I am going to get round to watching this film because I've obviously seen the first one. I thought that was fantastic. A return to form for the whole Jurassic kind of a park franchise as a whole. And anything Chris Pratt's in always gets my attention. I've not read this review because I'm terrified it's going to spoil the film for me. But all the indicators are that this is a very good film. Yeah,
we'll certainly go along and see this, John, very soon. And I'm very much the same, you know, when these reviews are posted prior to us seeing them, I do try and avoid them until I've seen the movie. But just getting back, we're very familiar with the franchise anyway. We're very familiar with, you know, the Jurassic World instalment as well. And we talked about this on one of our very first podcasts when we were reviewing the first trailer. I don't know if it was a teaser trailer or the full trailer. We were very impressed with the visuals. It was good to see Jeff Goldblum making an appearance in there as well. That ties back to Jurassic Park. And yep, I mean, it's also good to see Colin Trevorrow is getting a credit in there as well as one of the writers, because he was obviously stepped away from this franchise to do episode 9, the untitled Star Wars episode, concluding part of the saga. And I'm not really familiar with Bayona's work, John. I know that he is, you know, a Spanish chap, and most of his films are, you know, have that Hispanic nature to them. I know that he did direct, and I think he wrote A Monster Calls as well from a few years ago. And I'm certainly looking forward to seeing this instalment.
Yeah, I hope he's not a Catalonian nationalist, even, because he would kill you if you said he was Spanish. But we're moving on to the very next film, which is John Dies at the End, a sci-fi horror fantasy directed by Don Coscarelli, and it stars Chase Williamson, Rob Mays, Paul Giamatti, Clancy Brown, Glyn Turman and Doug Jones. It's a very good cast. Title's kind of alarming though for a guy that shares the name John. I hope he doesn't die at the end if it's me. As I says, the cast is fantastic. Stephen Clancy Brown, that's the guard from Shawshank Redemption, brilliant chap. And obviously Paul Giamatti, an absolute legend. Doug Jones as well, fantastic actor. So I've not seen the film. The fact that it is a horror sci-fi fantasy, again, right up my street. And I'd probably give this a watch just on the basis of the cast alone, not knowing anything about the story. And Darren indeed has given it a very, very good review. he says if you like the weird and non-Hollywood film, then you would give this a watch, and I very much do. I like watching strange horror foreign language films, so I will give this a watch for sure.
Yeah, I've not seen it either, John. But I think Paul Giamatti is a terrific actor. Whether he's in a supporting role, as in like The Truman Show or whatever, he always makes his mark. You know, and going back to, I think it might have been 2003's American Splendor, which I thought it was amazing. It was a terrific film. I think I've owned that on every platform available, from DVD, Blu-ray to digital download. It's a terrific film, and Giamatti he's certainly the man. This is one I think I'm going to actually check out. I think it's a great review from Darren. Gives it a high rating, so does IMDb, and I'll certainly look out for this one.
As why? Am I going to move on? No. The next film, which is one that I reviewed, Deadpool 2. Of course, out just a few weeks ago, Stephen. I think it's maybe a month into its cinematic release over here. Absolutely fantastic film. I did speak about it briefly last week in the box office chat segment of the show. The plot is basically about Cable coming back in time to kill off Firefist, who has committed an atrocity. I'll not go into too much detail in case it's too spoiler filled, but if you're going to read my review, then it'll be full of spoilers anyway. But yeah, Deadpool kind of tries to stop him getting the child. He tries to save the child before he turns into a monster, and then in between he's kind of dealing with the heartache of losing someone very close to him. Again, not trying to be too spoiler filled. Fantastic film, amazing humour, amazing action set pieces, all the violence you would expect in a film like this, all the expletives you'd expect in a film like this. Ryan Reynolds, incredible. Josh Brolin, once again, incredible. The little chap who plays Firefist, I forget his name at the moment, he was another standout. Tapinder, TJ Miller, just excellent performances across the cast as a whole. Fantastic story. They've managed to capture lightning in a bottle once again, and I would highly recommend giving it a bash.
I'm certainly looking forward to this, John. I did say last week that I was going to check this out last week, but unfortunately due to work commitments I couldn't go and see this in the cinema. It's certainly on my radar. I am going to see it this week and I can't wait to see it. But that wraps up the Movie Burner blog rundown for this week. You can check out all the latest movie reviews on our website at movieburnerentertainment.org. We're just going to move on to a last piece of news that dropped, and this was on Variety once more. A very reliable source is Variety. Yeah. Love going there, but it did intrigue us. You're certainly a big fan of the original movie, John, and this is Ewan McGregor to star in the new Shining movie Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, he's going to be playing Danny in the sequel to The Shining, of course. Stephen King penned the sequel to the film a long, long time after the original book. I believe it was back in 2011 or something, called Dr. Sleep. And this is going to be an adaptation of that. Basically, Danny is now an adult. He's got his troubles. He's a bit of an alcoholic, and he's haunted by the events of the original Shining film, which also took place at the Overlook Hotel. I'm very, very excited about this piece of news, Stephen. Haven't read the book, haven't read the original book either, so I don't know if they butchered that. One thing I didn't realise was that Danny actually had supernatural powers, but I'll let you in to give me your thoughts on the whole thing.
Yeah, I didn't know that either about Danny, John. I know that they've been struggling to develop a prequel for a number of years now, so this is certainly big news, John. You know, Mike Flanagan, who helped and adapt the King novel Gerard's Game, is directing, as we said, you know, and his producing partner Trevor Macy is involved, so this is such a big step in the right direction for this sequel to happen. Certainly looks like it's going to happen. But as I said, you know, they did struggle with the prequel Overlook Hotel for years, as mentioned in this article. You know, and following on from the successes of Stephen King's It, this is a no-brainer, John. Yeah. I think, you know, sequels to original classic movies, especially, you know, The Shining is over 4 decades old now. There's certainly a big shadow over this proposed sequel. But I think, you know, it's probably the right time to do it with the success, or the recent success, of Stephen King's It.
Yeah, and just speaking about the director Mike Flanagan, he obviously directed Ouija, Origin of Evil, I believe a couple of years ago. That was an okay horror film. It was quite creepy in parts, I'll give it that. Again, I don't scare very easily. I'm very much into the psychological sort of a horror films, and The Shining, the original Shining, was very much in that category, but it was more foreboding, and you just knew Jack Nicholson's character was diving further and further into insanity, and just seeing him crack and also turn into an absolute murderous lunatic. It's one of my all-time favourite films. I absolutely love it. Again, I don't know if the adaptation was all that faithful. They say this is going to be loosely based on the sequel King novel, And just the general premise of the story is very intriguing. As I said, it does follow Danny Torrance, who is still carrying the trauma of what happened at Overlook Hotel into his adulthood. He's kind of hovering about a hostel, helping dying people. He's got psychic abilities. He meets this woman, a girl that's got psychic abilities, and he's trying to save her from these murderous people that are trying to steal the horror or steam or something. I don't know. It's a weird premise, but it's an interesting premise, and I hope that they do it credit and it lives up to the original film. As I say, it's one of my all-time favourite horror films. Getting Ewan McGregor in there is a very positive move indeed, because he's a great actor, as we've discussed numerous times before. Stephen, what I will say though is the talks of a sequel to the original film. They say they're still looking to do a film based on the past events at Overlook Hotel, and that would be very, very interesting to me. Obviously we get a hint at that when we look at the photos, and that obviously changing to mirror Jack when he slips further into insanity. We know there was previous goings on and paranormal things happening. Obviously the previous caretaker murdered his family with axes, so I'd love to see a sequel of that. This film apparently does end at the Overlook Hotel. The climatic scenes take place there again, so that'll be intriguing to see how they recreate that and how that'll look. One final thing I'll say is that I think the composer is going to be so important with this. The Shining score was just amazing. That Shining theme is one of the greatest pieces of cinematic music I think it's ever been put to paper. Absolutely eerie, goosebumps material, and I think it's so important to get the composer right for this sequel film, because if I get that right, then it'll add so much more to the film as well.
I think recreating this will not be a problem, John. We already saw in Ready Player One how visually accurate they nailed it in that film. I think Spielberg, he must be a massive fan of the original movie from Stanley Kubrick, because that was the standout scenes in Ready Player One for me, was those shining sequences. I think they got the setting and the tone of that bang on. I don't think it'll be an issue if they are going down the road of recreating, from the original movie. Ewan McGregor coming in to play the older version of Danny Torrance, I think, is a terrific casting. Ewan McGregor is very similar line that he's already doing in picking up, playing an older version of a classic character, and Christopher Robin, which is coming out very shortly. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ewan McGregor in there. Interesting, I did pick up from this article, which I didn't know about The Shining on its initial release. It was considered a box office disappointment, earning $44 million on a $19 million budget. Now, however, it is thought to be one of the greatest horror classics of all time. That's astounding to me. At the time, it was a box office disappointment, because we regard The Shining as an iconic horror film now, and it's very hard to understand that this film was an actual disappointment at the box office back in the day.
Yeah, I don't think Stephen King was a big fan of it, Stephen. I think they did butcher the adaptation of the original novel, as I said earlier on in the discussion. I wasn't aware that Danny had supernatural powers, for want of a better word. But also we get a hint at it when he sees the little twins and just some of the weird stuff happening in the film. But apparently it's quite this shining powers or something, and I can see why he didn't like it, because he's obviously glossed over a lot of the original novels, plot points and stuff like that. But I'm very excited to see where this goes direction wise, whether they can get the tone right. Obviously this guy, the director Mike Flanagan's no Stanley Kubrick, so we're not going to recapture the essence of that great man's work. He's not going to be bullying actors and stuff like that to get the best possible performance, make their lives an absolute misery on the set, as we know he did with the lead Shelley Duvall. She says it was one of the worst experiences of her life, but obviously got a performance out of her. I don't expect it to be recapturing the magic, but it's a completely different story, and I can't wait to see what else comes out about it, and who else to get on board for the cast. Ewan McGregor's a great start.
Yeah, and just before we finish on this topic, John, it'll be interesting to see how this is released, whether or not they'll go down the Hollywood release of the way they did with It, or whether or not they will go down the Netflix sort of release of Gerard's Game, depending on, I suppose, the budget. But it'll be interesting to see anyway. It certainly interests me. I think I'm not always too keen on sequels to iconic films, but I think in this case it'd be interesting to see where this character is now and where he is in his head as well. And I'll certainly give this a bash when it comes out. Just moving on, John, now to a final segment of the show, which we just like to call Box Office Chat. This is based on the weekend of June 8th to the 10th here in the UK. And coming in at number 1 is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and its first week grossing £10.6 million.
Yeah, there's no surprise with this one, Stephen. This was always going to come in at number 1. It's obviously a massive summer blockbuster. We just discussed it in the Movie Burner blog rundown. It's the sequel to the first Jurassic World film. It's part of a trilogy, and it looks very, very intriguing. I'm pleased to see it's doing relatively well. The trailers were kind of getting panned by a lot of people, and then the early reactions from Spain, I believe it was, where they done an early screening to the public, were enormously positive. So I'm not surprised it's crossed £10.5 million in its opening week and weekend. That's a massive number for the United Kingdom. It probably looks terrible in terms of United States standards. But yeah, I mean, this is a success and it's shown Solo how to do it.
Yeah, it's no great surprise, John. We did expect this to come in at number 1 this week. I think that's terrific numbers for its release as well. Just $10.5 million there over the weekend. Just moving on to number 2 now. It's Deadpool 2. It earned another £1.2 million over the weekend, grossing £29.9 million, just under £30 million here in the UK in its 4th week.
Yeah, and interestingly, it's went up 116 theatres since last week. It's now shown in 719 theatres. It's grossed nearly £30 million. Massively successful film. I think it's became the most successful R-rated sequel film or something like that. So that's great news for that. As I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic film. Great story, great mixture of performances. Had everything in there. Had a bit of romance, bit of sadness, some action, violence, gore, everything. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly deserving of its crossing. And again, it's shown Solo how to do it.
Yeah, and pity we can't say this about the next film, Solo, showing how to do it. But this is in number 3 now, John, grossing another 1.2 million over the weekend. Overall 16.3 in its 3rd week as Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah, it's just sad seeing this film lingering at number 3 after just 3 weeks, Stephen. This should be battling it out with the likes of Jurassic World, even in its 3rd week. It's a Star Wars release, and to see it just toiling at 16.2 million after 3 weeks, it's absolute madness to say that, because that's a huge amount of money. But for a Star Wars film, it's just not acceptable, sadly. And it's dropped in theatres now as well. It's dropped 67 from last weekend. It's not good enough, and it's floating, sadly. It's a great film, thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, we talk about the last film there. It had an enjoyable little story. It was a fun adventure film. Thought it had some brilliant performances, most notably from Emilia Clarke, who surprised me. Donald Glover and Alden Ehrenreich, and even Woody as well. I nearly forgot Woody Harrelson, but yeah, it's dropping, and it's going to continue to drop. It's only grossed 1.1 million after 3 weeks. That's a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, all the ingredients are correct in this movie. You've got a great cast, you've got a very good storyline as well. Visually, it's a very entertaining film as well, which really raises the question, why is this flopped so badly? Well, we all know the reasons for that. We did get into it on the Force Friday show. But just moving on, John, to number 4 this week, it's Book Club, grossing £500,000 over the weekend. Overall, $2 million in its 2nd week.
Yeah, I spoke about this last week, Stephen, when I says it wasn't catered to me, my demographic. I think it's more directed at women in general. And I says last week that my mother was interested in going to see this. I'm certainly not, but listen, I'm glad to see it's doing okay. $2 million for a film of this size is very decent. It wouldn't have had a big budget by any means. And yeah, can't add much more to that.
Yeah, it's got a great cast as well, John, but I can clearly see where you're coming from there. But just moving on to number 5 this week is Avengers Infinity War, John, and this earned another £400,000 over the weekend, John. Overall, 70.8 million, absolutely amazing in 7 weeks. I don't think we've got anything else we can say about this absolute blockbuster of a film.
Yeah, I completely agree, Stephen. There isn't a huge amount more to say about it, though. All I'll finish by saying on this film is that it has grossed over $2 billion worldwide. It's become the first Marvel studio production and first superhero movie to eclipse $2 billion worldwide. The only question remaining for this film is whether it's got the legs to topple The Force Awakens. It's past the Titanic, I believe. Can it topple The Force Awakens at the box office? I highly doubt it, but it made just.
Yeah, I didn't know that it surpassed Titanic, John. Another thing that I didn't realise about Titanic was how it's so high up on that list is because of a re-release. I didn't even know about that, but that remains to be seen.
It's a classic James Cameron move, Stephen. He keeps re-releasing films to get them higher and higher.
That's another story. But just moving on to number 6 in the top 10 this week is Sherlock Gnomes. I know that Anna Maria, our writer, reviewed this last week, John. It's earned another 300,000 over the weekend, grossing £7.6 million in 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's doing very well. As I said, this is a film that gets panned by most critics and audience members alike, but it's grossed 7.6 million after 5 weeks, so it's doing okay. It's an animated film. I think the cast is fairly decent. Just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't connect with the trailer when I went to see Isle of Dogs, so I never went to see it. So I've not got much more to add, but it's doing very well and fair play to it.
Yeah, and just moving on, John. This is in its 12th week now. Is Blade Runner. This secret cinema thing's certainly working for this movie. Yeah. With its cult following, it earned another £200,000 over the weekend, grossing 4.1 million after, as I said, 12 weeks.
Yeah, my only question about this now, Stephen, is how much of a cut does this secret cinema production company take compared to Warner Brothers? Because £4 million is just ridiculous for a film that's 40 years old now. Fair play to them. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not interested in going and marrying live performances with cinema. It's just not for me, sorry. If I want that, I'll go to a theatre and watch a theatrical performance or kind of a Broadway style thing. I'm not interested in marrying cinema with live performances. And I think the fact that it's still firmly within the top 10 speaks more about the lack of competition in the UK box office at the moment than anything else. You've got the top 3 films and then it's pretty poor after that. We haven't got Incredibles 2, Upgrade, or any of the other films that are coming out over the United States. We're having to wait months in advance because the bloody World Cup's on. Well, we can't go and watch films in the cinema and watch the World Cup at the same time. Studios, what the hell are you doing? I'm getting sidetracked. We'll move on. So, Stephen, unless you've got anything more to add.
Well, just judging on the last few games, John, I'd rather be at the cinema, I've got to be honest with you. But you know what you said there does sum up the top 10 this week, John. We will move on, and it's going to be very anticlimactic, I'm afraid. But just coming in at number 8 this week, it's Show Dogs, and its 3rd week. It's earned another 200,000, grossing 2.5 million overall.
Yeah, this is that crap dog comedy film, isn't it, Stephen? We've got talking dogs. Clearly the studio responsible for this, I don't know who it is, didn't learn the past mistakes of Dr. Dolittle version 70, where it's just a non-starter. These films don't connect. I say that though, it's grossed £2.6 million nearly at the box office after 3 weeks. So what the hell do I know? That's a very decent sum of money. Clearly they've got some group of fools to go in and watch it. I don't know who it is. Maybe it's young people.
I think so, John. I think it's 1920 cinemas over Glasgow that's covering this movie, so I can understand why it's hanging about in the top 10.
Yes.
And just moving on to number 9 this week, it's a film called Calla. This film over the weekend earned £200,000 in its first week, John. This movie, it's another Indian release, John, in its first week. This one's getting higher ratings than Verdi Wedding, which we talked about last week. This one's certainly get higher ratings. On IMDb, it's getting 7.7 out of 10. That's not bad.
Yeah, I described the Verdi Wedding as an Indian Amy Schumer film and a Melissa McCarthy film, i.e. it's absolute shit. But this one seems to be the Indian version of The Godfather with a Slumdog Millionaire take on it. It's about a guy that runs away from a city in his childhood, moves to Mumbai where he becomes a powerful don living in the slums of Dharavi. I don't know where the hell that is, Stephen. I know where Mumbai is. I don't know where Dharavi is. Maybe it's a neighbourhood in the city. But it's an intriguing concept. It's not one I'm going to go and watch because I don't speak Indian. I do like the occasional foreign language film, but I can't see me going to watch this in a cinema. It's just not going to happen.
No, but I think, John, that the UK having such a large Indian community, I can see why it's popped up in the top 10 there, and the fact it's getting high ratings, it's getting good reviews as well, and it's coming in just under 3 hours long as well. So this is clearly a big release for Indian cinema, and this is directed by Pa Rajinth, and be interesting to see if it's still in the top 10 next week.
I have no idea who Pa Rajinth is, Stephen. That shows more about my ignorance than it does about Pa Rajinth. But we're moving on to the final film, number 10 in this week's box office chat, and it's McQueen, which is obviously a documentary about the rags to rich story of Alexander McQueen, who is obviously a fashion designer and a well-renowned fashion designer. It says it's a modern-day fairy tale story. Much like the other films that I've discussed that are not my cup of tea, I'm not going to go and watch it. I do like a good documentary though, so if it pops up on Netflix in maybe a year or so, or maybe on Sky or something, then I'll give it a bash then. And it's getting an 8.9 out of 10, so it must be very good. And I'm sure I will get around to watching it if it pops up on a digital streaming platform. But I'm not going to go to watch it in the cinema, sadly.
It's only in one theatre here in Glasgow anyway, John. But yep, it's getting high ratings. You know, I think this is a popular, as you said, rags to riches story. Yeah, this is directed by Ian Bonhotti. Hope I pronounced that right, John. And Peter Entigue, who co-directed it. He has, you know, I know I'm familiar with his name through, I think he did a George Best documentary a couple of years ago, which was a very fascinating, you know, documentary on the legendary Northern Irish footballer. Yeah, you know, I think I'm the same, John. I do like a documentary. If the subject interests me, I can watch most documentaries, but as you said, I wouldn't rush out to the cinema to see this. Certainly if it's on Netflix, I will give it a watch.
Yeah, he also done a documentary about Marlon Brando as well, Stephen. Listen to Me, Marlon, which again, much more votes on IMDb, but it's getting 8.2 out of 10, so clearly these are two chaps that know how to make good documentaries, so as I says, I will watch it at some point, though not in the cinema. But that just brings us to the end of this week's box office chat, where we break down the top 10 films for the last weekend in the UK box office, and indeed it brings us to the end of episode 36 of the Movie Burner podcast. We'd just like to thank you for listening to us, and we'll be back again next week.
Remember guys, if you're enjoying the content we're putting out, then subscribe to our channel, like, comment and share our videos. You can also find us on iTunes and Google Play at the Movie Burner Podcast, and give us a little follow on Facebook and Twitter at Movie Burners. If you fancy a spot of casual reading, then all our latest written reviews and occasional articles can be found at movieburnerentertainment.org. Until the next time, goodbye.